So let's talk about that number one seed. Where do we stand with the NFC in terms of who's closest to getting that number one seed? Well, let's take a look. Eagles currently, if the season ended today, they would be 10-2. They would have that number one seed with home field advantage. Right behind them, you would have the 49ers, the Lions, and then the Cowboys would be in that fifth seed. Fourth seed would be the Atlanta Falcons because they would be the division winners of that AFC or the NFC South, excuse me. So this is where it can get interesting, right? So we got to pull in the schedules here. So let's take a look at, obviously, Let's take a look at the 49ers. There's a lot of information here. So let's take a look at the 49ers schedule first, right? So let's take a look at those final 5 games here for the 49ers. You got the Seahawks twice. You got the Seahawks, you got the Cardinals, you got the Ravens, you got the Commanders, and the Rams. I would say, obviously, the Ravens is the one that sticks out right there. But obviously, 3 out of the 5 are division games. And those are never guaranteed, right? So the reason why that's important to look at the 49ers right now is if the season ended today, and if we're talking about the number one seed, and if the Eagles weren't in this picture, right? If the Cowboys and the 49ers end with the same record, obviously the 49ers hold that tiebreaker because they dominated them earlier in the season, beating them, and they would have that tiebreaker. So it's important when you're looking at these final 5 games, the Cowboys' road to a number one seed would require the 49ers to drop a game or 2 here. I would say obviously 3 is best scenario, but thinking that the 49ers are going to drop 3 games out of the next 5 would be insane. I mean, that requires them going 2-3. And the possibility is there, right? But the reason why they lost their games is because they were having issues with injuries. I'm not going to wish injuries or anything like that, but I'm just saying, there's always a possibility that something like that could affect those final 5 games. Hopefully it doesn't. I want all teams at their healthiest, but that's why it's kind of on the outside looking in. And when you hear someone say that the Cowboys control their own destiny, it's not technically correct. And that's why, again, the NFC is so competitive, because that week 5 matchup between the Cowboys and the 49ers, it was fun, right? Like, we couldn't wait to see it. Obviously, it didn't turn our own way, but things like that matter in the NFC, that if you don't win a game as of early, in week 5, you're looking back at that game in December, beginning of January, almost regretting it, thinking, man, if that were close. Now, that's me. Personally, that's not the game that I regret. The game that I regret is the one that I went to, and it was the Arizona Cardinals game. Imagine if the Cowboys took care of business and did what they were supposed to. We're at 10-2. We're right into that number one seed discussion. But unfortunately, we didn't, and that's why you got to take care of your business. And then if you want to get a little bit deeper and you want me to twist the knife in the wound, Cowboys were 6 yards away from stealing a win in Philadelphia against the Eagles, but a couple of plays later, they come up short and they didn't win it. And if you want me to turn the knife even a little bit more, you can look at Dak Prescott's foot stepping out of bounds on the 2-point conversion, because if he gets his feet in right there, and if he gets the 2-point conversion, then we get the ball back, we kick the field goal, we win the game, and we're sitting at 10-2 instead of 9-3 right now. So let me tell you, it's a game of inches, and it's just insane. Again, hats off to this NFC about how competitive it is, and we're going to be looking back when we get to the playoffs and notice, wow, it was that play could have changed it, that play could have changed it, and that's insane. And I think that's why everyone low-key hasn't gotten over that Cowboys and Jaguars game back in Jacksonville last year, because if the Cowboys win that, or even if they win the game in Green Bay, it changes their whole season around, and that's super important, right? Because the Cowboys are obviously a better team at home than they are on the road. So, we're on the outside looking in with that. And then if you look at the Eagles schedule, we kind of all seen the Eagles schedule already, but they play the Cowboys, they play the Seahawks, they play the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants, which is an absolute cakewalk of a schedule if you ask me. But you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that, because they really took care of their own business. And that's me being unbiased and realistic. They had that hard stretch that everyone was talking about. Everyone was like, just wait until you play this team. Just wait until you play these guys. Well, they played the Dolphins. They beat them 31-17. They beat the Chiefs, and you could complain about that pass that was dropped by MVS in the end zone from Mahomes, but they still won on the road in Arrowhead. And then you can complain about the Buffalo and about the calls in Buffalo and against Buffalo. Well, they won in overtime 37-34. They found a way to win, and they took care of their business right there. And again, they took care of the Cowboys as well, winning 28-23. So we can criticize them, but there was that one point in the season where we're all kind of like, wait until you play these guys. Well, in that stretch, let me count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In that 6-game stretch where it started with the Dolphins and it ended last week against the 49ers, they went 5-1. So hats off to this team. They took care of business. I mean, they couldn't, right? They couldn't have, but they did. And hats off to them, because now they can hopefully just cruise into this later part of the schedule and just get into the playoffs and steal that number 1 seed. But as for the Cowboys on our side, obviously it heats up, right? So you got the Eagles, you got the Bills, you got the Dolphins, you got the Lions, and the Commanders. Let me just say this, and we're still talking about the number 1 seed, right? So the Eagles handled their business. Whether you like it or not, they won those games fair and square, 5-1. And I know fair is a stretch because we all have opinions about the referee and the officiating. But the Eagles took care of business. I mean, you can't twist it any other way. That's what they are, and that's what their record is right now. They're 10-2. If the Cowboys are going to be contenders and not pretenders, if they're really going to be legitimate and be involved in that conversation, not only for the NFC East or the number 1 seed, if we're talking about championship material, this is where you do it. This is the stretch where you need to do it. And I wouldn't have it any other way as a Cowboys fan, because there's a couple advantages of this. First off, every game is a playoff game on out. So this team is already prepping with that mentality. They're playing good teams. They're getting really good competition. Teams that will be fighting for something just as much as the Cowboys will be fighting for something in the last weeks of football. So that's advantage number 1. Advantage number 2 and pro number 2, we're going to know what team we have here by the time we get to the postseason. Whether we're the 5th seed or the number 1 seed, whatever it may be, we're going to know who we are, what we can do best, and we're going to deal with the results. So if the Cowboys really want to go out there and take advantage and be a part of that legitimate conversation, it's simple. Go out there and win.